I didn't know my life was about to change that Thursday afternoon. I came home early around 4, arms full of groceries, keys still warm from the ignition. The house smelled like white wine and perfume. Ethan's book club was in full swing in the living room. 5 women arranged around our coffee table, glasses in hand, a stack of books none of them had actually read sitting neatly in the center. It looked normal, ordinary, harmless. I stepped inside, balancing the grocery bags against my hip. "Hey everyone," I said lightly, smiling the way I always did. Silence. Not awkward silence. Not distracted silence. Deliberate silence. All 5 of them looked directly at me for exactly 3 seconds, then turned their heads away in perfect synchronization, resuming their conversation mid-sentence as if I hadn't spoken at all. Ethan didn't even glance at me. I stood there, still holding the bags, confused at first. Maybe they hadn't heard me. "What's going on?" I asked again. Nothing. No reaction, no flicker, no eye contact. They talked over me about communication frameworks and power dynamics in marriage. One of them laughed. Ethan reached around me to refill her wine glass like I was a coat rack blocking her way. That's when I felt it. Something cold and calculated. This wasn't spontaneous. It was rehearsed. When the women left an hour later, they hugged Ethan at the door. Not one of them looked at me, even though I was standing right there in the entryway. After they were gone, Ethan went upstairs without a word. That night, she put in her earbuds and turned her back to me in bed. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The silence wasn't emotional. It wasn't hurt. It was strategic. I didn't know it yet, but her book club had voted 4-1. The motion. Treat your husband like he's invisible for 30 days to teach him appreciation. Ethan thought she was about to win a game. She had no idea what she had just started, and she definitely had no idea how it would end. I'm Mara Hayes, 33 years old, and I've always been the kind of woman who keeps things steady. Not boring steady, more like the person everyone relies on. The one who remembers the due dates, who refills the dog's water bowl before it's empty, who checks the weather before a trip, who makes sure the life we built doesn't wobble. I work in project operations for a mid-sized tech company, mostly remote, lots of spreadsheets, timelines, calls that start with quick sync and end 40 minutes later. It's not glamorous, but it's good money, good benefits, and I'm good at it. I like systems. I like clarity. I like knowing where I stand. That's probably why I fell for Ethan. But in our story, my husband is the one who has to fit reality. His name is Ethan Carter. Ethan was charming in a way that made rooms lean toward him. Not loud, not obnoxious, just effortless. He had that smile that implied he'd already forgiven you for whatever mistake you were about to make. He could tell a story about buying toothpaste and somehow make you laugh. We met at a friend's housewarming party 5 years ago. I remember it so clearly because I almost didn't go. I'd had a long week. I wanted sweatpants and quiet. But my friend Nina, my oldest friend, texted me, "Show up for 1 hour, I'm begging." So I went because that's what I do. I walked into a crowded apartment with cheap wine and loud music and immediately regretted it. And then Ethan handed me a cup of water. Not wine, not a cocktail, water. He didn't flirt. He didn't lean in too close. He just looked at me, noticed my tired eyes, and said, "You look like you've been fighting the world all week. Hydrate first." That was the first hook. Not his looks, although he was handsome. Dark hair, clean jawline, the kind of shoulders that made sweaters look expensive. It was the way he saw me, without demanding anything from me. We talked on the balcony for most of the night. He told me he worked in brand marketing, the corporate kind where you say words like positioning and engagement and pretend it's not just convincing people to buy things they don't need. He teased me for being allergic to small talk. I teased him for using marketing phrases like they were a second language. When I left, he didn't ask for my number like it was a conquest. He said, "If you want to keep talking, I'd like that." I gave it to him. Our dating life felt easy at first. Ethan brought lightness into my routines. He'd show up with takeout when I worked late or send me a playlist called For Mara, Who Pretends She Doesn't Have Feelings. He remembered my coffee order. He made my friends like him, effortlessly, and I loved that he loved me. At least I thought he did. The first year was all promise. The second year was moving in together. The third year was buying the house, a modest 2-story place in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but ours. And we did it the responsible way. Mortgage in both names, household account for joint expenses, separate personal accounts so we didn't fight about small purchases. I thought that was smart. Looking back, I realized it also gave Ethan a private space to become someone else. We didn't have kids. Not because I didn't want them, but because every time I brought it up seriously, Ethan would say things like, "Let's get stable first," even when we were stable, or "We'll talk about it after your next promotion," even when I got it. I told myself it was timing. I told myself it was stress. I told myself love could be patient. We got married after 2 years of living together. Small wedding. Backyard lights. Nina cried. Ethan cried too. Real tears. His parents hugged me like I'd been officially accepted. His mother, Diane Carter, loved me in that polished, conditional way some women do. She complimented me like I was a product she almost approved of. "You're so organized, Mara. You keep Ethan grounded. You're very capable." It was always about what I provided, never about who I was. And I didn't notice that at the time, because I was proud of being capable. Ethan's sister, Lila, was friendly enough. She laughed at my jokes. She posted photos with me at holidays. She called me sis in texts. But there was always an undertone, like she was watching, measuring, deciding if I belonged. And Ethan's friend circle, that's where the subtle pressure lived. A lot of couples, a lot of brunches, a lot of joking about marriage survival like it was a sport. There was one woman in particular, Tessa. She wasn't an ex, not officially. Just a presence. The kind of woman who touched Ethan's arm when she laughed, who hugged him longer than necessary, who looked at me like I was a temporary obstacle. Ethan always brushed it off. "She's just like that. You're overthinking. She's not a threat." And I swallowed it, because I didn't want to be the wife who policed friendships. I didn't want to be insecure. I wanted to be modern, mature, confident. So I became quieter about things that bothered me. I learned to choose peace. I learned to let things slide. And in our house, slowly, almost invisibly, the balance shifted. Ethan started treating my routines like they were defaults. If the fridge was full, it was because I filled it. If the laundry was done, it was because I noticed it needed doing. If his family had gifts, cards, holiday plans, it was because I managed it. Ethan would call me amazing, in the same tone you'd call a dishwasher reliable. He appreciated me like a function, and I didn't realize how tired that made me until the day I walked into my own living room and was treated like air. Because that was the moment something snapped into focus. This wasn't a random mood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the first time Ethan and the women around him stopped pretending I mattered. And as I stood there, with groceries cutting into my fingers, I understood something terrifying. If people can coordinate silence like that, they can coordinate a lot more than silence. The silence didn't break the next morning. I woke up before Ethan, like I usually did. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. For a brief second, I wondered if I had imagined everything. Maybe it had been some strange social experiment that ended once the guests left. Then he came down the stairs. I had already made coffee, 2 mugs like always. His navy one with the chipped handle, mine plain white. He walked straight past the counter, opened the cabinet, and took out a different mug. Not an accident. He didn't look at me, didn't say good morning, didn't even clear his throat. He made his coffee, stood 2 feet away from me, and stared at the wall like I was furniture. "Did you sleep okay?" I asked carefully. "Nothing." He grabbed a banana, walked to his home office, and shut the door. Firmly. The sound echoed through the house like punctuation. That was when I understood this wasn't moodiness. It was structured, deliberate, sustained. And suddenly, small memories began rearranging themselves in my head, like puzzle pieces finally snapping together. 2 weeks before the book club incident, Ethan had come home talking about a relationship psychology book the group was reading. Something about resetting dynamics, about correcting imbalance. He'd laughed when he mentioned it, like it was a harmless self-help cliche. Apparently, he'd said, sometimes one partner needs to experience absence to appreciate presence. I'd rolled my eyes at the time. That sounds manipulative. He'd shrugged. It's academic. Now the phrase replayed in my mind like a warning I hadn't taken seriously. Experience absence. I worked from the dining table that Friday. Laptop open, emails flowing. Ethan moved around the house freely, took calls, laughed on Zoom meetings, made himself lunch. Not once did he acknowledge me. He opened the fridge in front of me, grabbed leftovers, closed it, as if I were a shadow cast by the light. I tested it once. He was on the phone near the hallway, leaning against the wall. I stepped directly into his path. He didn't stop. He sidestepped around me without eye contact, continuing his sentence mid-thought. My chest tightened. It wasn't just silence. It was choreography. That afternoon, I texted him, "Can we talk?" I watched from across the room as his phone lit up on his desk. He looked at it, read it. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared. No reply. The cruelty wasn't loud. It was surgical. By Saturday morning, something inside me shifted. If I was invisible, then I was also unobserved, untethered, untitled. Ethan always mowed the lawn on Saturdays, like clockwork. He prided himself on it. Straight lines, perfect edges. It was his domain. This time, he slept in. 10 o'clock. Then 11. I heard his footsteps pause outside the bedroom twice, like he expected me to knock, to ask, to need something. I didn't. At noon, I went downstairs and made myself an elaborate breakfast. Eggs, avocado toast, fresh berries. I used the expensive olive oil we usually saved for guests. I left the skillet soaking in the sink. I sat at the table slowly, deliberately. Ethan hovered near the kitchen doorway for a second, watching. He opened his mouth slightly. I could see the impulse to speak. Then he snapped it shut. He grabbed his car keys and left. The front door slammed harder than necessary, and through the open window, I heard his voice on the phone. "She's doing it on purpose. I know she is. She's trying to break me." He wasn't wrong, but neither was I. That afternoon, I went into the closet and pulled out a box I hadn't touched in years. My camera. A professional-grade Nikon I had once used almost daily. Before marriage. Before subtle comments like, "You're spending a lot of time away lately," and "We can't keep investing in hobbies," and "The house needs attention." Little by little, I had stopped shooting, sold 2 lenses, tucked the rest away under Ethan's unused gym equipment. I brought everything downstairs and spread it across the dining table. Bodies, lenses, memory cards. It felt like opening a time capsule. When Ethan came home and saw it, he froze. His face tightened. His jaw flexed. He wanted to ask what I was doing. He wanted to say something about the mess, about priorities, about balance. Instead, he walked past me like I wasn't there. But I heard him call someone from the driveway. "She's pulling the camera stuff out again. After all this time." Pause. I know. But she's doing it to provoke me. No. I was doing it to remember myself. Sunday morning, I woke up at 6, loaded my gear into the car, drove to the mountains. The sunrise cut through fog like gold splitting silk. I stood there for 4 hours, fingers numb from cold, heart pounding with something I hadn't felt in years. Autonomy. I didn't text Ethan. Didn't leave a note. When I came back around 11, he was pacing in the kitchen. The second I stepped inside, his face flooded with relief. Relief that I was safe. Relief that I hadn't disappeared. And then, anger. Because he couldn't show either. He clenched his jaw so tightly I could see the muscle jump. He wanted to ask where I'd been. He couldn't. He wanted to demand answers. He couldn't. That afternoon, I edited photos in the living room. I could feel him behind me, hovering, pretending to reorganize shelves that didn't need reorganizing. He stared at one image on my screen, sunlight breaking through mist. He used to love my photography when we first met, back when it made me interesting, back when it wasn't inconvenient. Our eyes almost met in the reflection of the monitor. He looked away first. That night I made pasta. For one. Used the aged Parmesan he always insisted we save. The smell filled the kitchen. He made himself a plain sandwich and sat across from me, staring at his plate. I heard him crying later in the bedroom. And for a moment, I almost felt guilty. Almost. But then I remembered, he chose this. Every silent second was his decision. And something else was becoming clear. This wasn't about appreciation. It was about control. He expected me to continue functioning, cooking, planning, serving, while being erased. And I realized something that terrified him more than silence ever could. If I was invisible, I didn't have to keep playing my assigned role. By day 6, the house didn't feel tense anymore. It felt divided, like an invisible line had been drawn down the center of every room. His side, my side, his silence, my awakening. But the real fracture came on Wednesday night. I was updating my old photography website, the one I'd let expire years ago because Ethan said it was a distraction from real priorities. I'd finally renewed the domain, reset the password, logged into the email account connected to it, and that's when I saw them. Unread messages. Not 1. Not 2. 7. All from 18 months ago. Subject lines like, "We'd love to feature your work. Are you still actively shooting? Following up, final call before we finalize the exhibit list." My breath caught. I scrolled. Every single one had been filtered automatically into spam. But not the usual random junk spam. These were legitimate gallery addresses. I clicked the filter settings. Custom rule. Created 2 years ago. All emails containing the word gallery, exhibit, or print purchase were redirected to spam and auto-marked as read. Auto-marked as read. My hands started shaking. I didn't create that rule. I would never sabotage my own opportunities. Which meant Ethan had access to the password back then. We used to share everything. He'd helped me organize my inbox once. Said he was cleaning up clutter. My heart pounded in my ears. This wasn't subtle discouragement. This wasn't gentle pressure. This was active obstruction. He hadn't just rolled his eyes at my photography. He had quietly deleted my future. I stood up so abruptly, my chair scraped loudly across the floor. Ethan was in the kitchen, scrolling on his phone. I walked in and held it out toward him, screen glowing. He looked then at me. For the first time in 6 days, our eyes locked. I didn't speak immediately. I just let him see that I knew. He glanced at the screen again. Then, incredibly, he looked away. Like I was showing him the weather forecast. The audacity of it hit me like a wave. "You filtered my gallery emails," I said quietly. Nothing. No reaction. I stepped closer. "You deleted opportunities." He exhaled sharply through his nose. His shoulders lifted, barely, as if to say, so what? The rage that rose in my chest wasn't explosive. It was clarifying. You decided what I was allowed to succeed at. Still silence. But this time, it felt different. Not controlled. Not strategic. It felt fragile. Like he knew the ground beneath him was cracking. I held the phone up again. "These were from 18 months ago. You remember what you told me that year?" He blinked slowly. "You said no one was interested anymore. You said maybe I'd peaked." His throat moved. A swallow. He wanted to argue, to defend, but he couldn't without breaking the game. And suddenly I understood something with painful precision. This wasn't about appreciation. It was about containment. He didn't want me visible. Not professionally, not socially, not emotionally, because visibility meant options, and options meant independence. And independence meant I might realize I didn't need him, which I was starting to. I lowered the phone slowly. Was I supposed to stay small forever? I asked. Silence, but his hands were shaking now. I could see it. He looked scared, and for the first time in our marriage, that fear wasn't mine. I walked back to my office, closed the door, sat down, and something inside me shifted from reaction to decision. That night, I didn't feel guilty about the pasta, or the lawn, or the early morning mountain shoots. I felt clarity. I opened our shared financial spreadsheet, pulled up the household account. Reviews contributions over the last 12 months. I transferred $2,800 every month. He transferred $1,200. But the shared account paid for his wine subscription, his gym membership he rarely used, his book club fees, his mother's birthday gifts, his sister's baby shower contribution, all labeled joint expense. My chest tightened. He had been invisible in responsibility while making me invisible in presence. I printed a detailed breakdown, left it neatly on the kitchen counter with a sticky note. New contribution structure starting next month. Equal shares only. The next morning, he found it. I watched from the hallway. He stood there for a full 5 minutes reading, color draining from his face. He grabbed his phone immediately. I heard his voice through the partially closed office door. She's changing the finances now. Pause. Yes, she's still not talking. Longer pause. But we had an agreement. Another silence. Then quieter. She's not supposed to push back. Not supposed to push back. That's when it crystallized. This whole silent treatment wasn't about communication. It was a correction, a disciplinary measure. I was meant to panic, to beg, to adjust. Instead, I was expanding. That afternoon, I searched for divorce attorneys. Not dramatically, not impulsively, just methodically. Downloaded financial statements, photographed key documents, backed up my entire photography portfolio to the cloud. If he could quietly rewrite my opportunities, I could quietly rewrite my exit. And for the first time since that Thursday afternoon, I felt something steady settle in my chest. Not anger, not grief, resolve. I didn't explode. That's what surprised me most. When you find out your husband quietly strangled your career opportunities and then tried to teach you your place through silence, you'd think there would be screaming, plates breaking, tears. Instead, there was a strange stillness inside me, like the moment after an earthquake, when the ground stops moving, but the damage is already done. That night, Ethan lay on his side of the bed, facing the wall. I lay on mine, staring at the ceiling. We were 6 inches apart. It felt like 6 miles. I listened to his breathing. Controlled, even, almost exaggerated, like he was pretending to sleep. I remembered our wedding night, how he had whispered, "We're a team, always." And I wondered when the team had turned into management. The next morning, I stopped making coffee for 2. I made 1 cup. Used the good beans, sat by the window and drank it slowly. He came downstairs, paused when he saw only 1 mug. He opened the cabinet, took out his own. His movements were sharper now, more irritated. He poured coffee, spilled some, didn't wipe it up. He glanced at me once, a flash, then away. He was waiting for me to crack, to demand an explanation, to apologize. But I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop and began reclaiming space, literally. The guest bedroom had been his overflow storage for 2 years. Old boxes, gym equipment, things he insisted he'd deal with later. I cleared it out, moved my desk in, hung 3 framed landscape prints on the wall, ones I'd taken down years ago because he said they made the house look too intense. I positioned my desk where the natural light hit in the afternoon. When he saw it, he stood in the doorway, watching. Conflicted, his eyes scanned the walls, the prints, my laptop, the second monitor. He stepped inside halfway, stopped. If he objected, he'd have to speak. He turned around and left. Door slammed. The slam didn't scare me. It confirmed something. He didn't want partnership. He wanted compliance. Later that afternoon, I updated my calendar. Every evening from 5 to 7. Photography, non-negotiable. I noticed something else. Next Saturday, there was a baby shower on our shared calendar. His cousin's wife. He clearly expected me to go with him. I deleted it from my schedule. Added. Stone Ridge Mountain Shoot. His phone notification chimed from the other room. I heard the sharp intake of breath. Seconds later, he appeared in my doorway holding his phone. Face flushed, eyes bright with anger. He pointed at the calendar event. I looked at him calmly. "Did you need something?" He froze. jaw tightening. He turned and left without a word. I could almost hear the internal debate raging in his head. Speak and lose the game. Stay silent and lose control. That evening, I drove to the park for golden hour. Shot for 2 hours straight. The sky melted from orange to violet. I talked with 2 other photographers, strangers, who treated me like I existed, like my work mattered. When I got home, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal from the box. No bowl, no milk. Just dry cereal and resentment. He stared at my camera bag, at my muddy boots, at the flush in my cheeks from being outside. He looked smaller, not physically, energetically, like something in him was shrinking as something in me expanded. Tuesday morning, I got a message from Lena, an old photography friend. Is that you posting again? Where have you been? I smiled for the first time in days. We met for coffee that afternoon. 2 hours of talking about aperture, light, lenses, galleries reopening downtown. She asked gently, "What pulled you away all these years?" I hesitated. "Life," I said. She looked at me for a long second. "Life doesn't mute talent," she said softly. "People do." The truth of it landed quietly. That night, I cooked Korean beef tacos from scratch. The house filled with garlic and sesame oil and spice. Ethan came downstairs halfway through, drawn by the smell. He leaned against the doorway, watched. I plated one perfect taco, sat down, didn't look up. He made himself toast, burned it, sat across from me, stared at my plate. For 5 years, I'd cooked meals he barely thanked me for. Now he understood the value of absence. Around 2 p.m. the next day, his friend Marcus came over. They were sitting in the living room when I walked through with my camera bag. "Heading out?" Marcus asked casually. Ethan shot him a sharp look. Marcus blinked, confused. Mid-sentence, he stopped talking to me. The tension was obvious. "Dude, this is weird," Marcus muttered quietly. Ethan pulled him into the kitchen, whispered urgently. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught enough. The full 30 days. She needs to understand. Marcus's response was low but firm. "This feels extreme." So it wasn't just book club. It was coordinated, planned. 30 days. The goal wasn't communication. It was dominance. That evening, after Marcus left looking uncomfortable, I sat alone in my office. Lights dim, camera gear laid out neatly. I opened my old portfolio box from the garage. Physical prints. Awards from competitions I'd forgotten I'd won. A press clipping from a local arts magazine that had once called my work fearless. I stared at that word for a long time. Fearless. When had I become careful instead? When had I started shrinking to fit a space someone else defined? I leaned back in my chair and whispered into the quiet room. I didn't deserve this. Not the silence. Not the sabotage. Not the correction. And I realized something crucial. This wasn't just about leaving. It was about not returning to who I had been before. Even if he apologized. Even if he broke the silence tomorrow. Something fundamental had shifted. You can't unknow that someone tried to erase you. You can't unknow that your success threatened them. That night, as Ethan lay rigid on his side of the bed, I felt no urge to fix it, no urge to reach across the gap. Just a steady thought pulsing quietly in my chest. He thinks he's teaching me my place. He has no idea I'm already outgrowing it. By day 9, the silence wasn't discipline anymore. It was desperation. Ethan was unraveling, just quietly enough to pretend he wasn't. I saw it in the way he hovered outside my new office, in the way he checked his phone every time mine buzzed, in the way he stared at my Instagram notifications lighting up the screen, because I had posted 5 photos from the mountain shoot. Within hours, the response flooded in. Old friends, former collaborators, a local gallery account commenting, "So glad to see you creating again." Even 2 female photographers I used to shoot with left enthusiastic comments about the light and framing. Ethan's jaw tightened every time my phone chimed. He couldn't ask who they were. He couldn't accuse. He couldn't even pretend indifference convincingly, because indifference only works when the other person shrinks. And I wasn't shrinking anymore. Friday evening, I updated my website again. A message popped up in my inbox from a downtown art center. First Friday artist meetup. Bring your portfolio, I replied immediately. Added it to the shared calendar. His notification went off in the living room. I heard his sharp exhale. 10 seconds later, he appeared in my doorway. Phone in hand, face red. He typed something on his screen, deleted it. Typed again, deleted it. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since that Thursday. There was jealousy in his eyes. Not romantic jealousy, territorial jealousy, like something he thought he owned was walking away. Did you need something? I asked calmly. He clenched his fist around the phone, turned, walked away. The door slammed so hard the wall vibrated. Later that night, he deliberately started cooking at exactly 5 o'clock, my scheduled photography time. He banged pots loudly, cabinet doors, metal against metal. He was baiting me, trying to pull me back into reaction. I grabbed my camera bag and left without acknowledging a sound. When I came home at 9, he was still awake. Laptop open, my Instagram page on the screen. He closed it the second I walked in, but not fast enough. He followed me into the kitchen when I went for water, opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He wanted to ask about the comments, about the meetup, about whether I was meeting men there, but he couldn't speak without surrendering the control mechanism, and that was the trap he had built for himself. Saturday morning, I left at 5 a.m., didn't tell him where I was going. Shot landscapes all day with Lena and 2 others. We had lunch in a small town cafe afterward. I laughed. I forgot to check the time. When I got home at 4, his car was in the driveway, but he wasn't inside. I opened our shared location app. He was parked at a coffee shop 3 blocks away, sitting, waiting, monitoring when I came home. The invisible wife had become his obsession. That evening, he had his book club friends over again. Same 5 women. I stayed in my office with the door slightly open, not hiding, just observing. I heard Sarah's voice first. Ethan, you've lost weight. You look exhausted. I'm fine, he snapped. This is working. Is it? Another voice. Lisa. She seems happier. Silence. She's being stubborn, Ethan said. She'll crack. Sarah sounded uneasy. Maybe you should just talk to her. We committed to 30 days, Ethan insisted. 4-1. Lisa's voice softened. I voted for an honest conversation, not this. This is how you win your marriage back, Ethan said. Win. The word hit like ice water. Lisa responded quietly, I don't think marriage is something you win. Long silence filled the room, and for the first time, I heard something fragile in Ethan's breathing. Doubt. But pride kept him locked in. That night, I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. I opened Google, searched divorce attorneys. 3 consultations booked for Sunday. I didn't cry, didn't pace, didn't dramatize it, just organized. Downloaded financial records, backed up emails, saved screenshots of the spam filter rule he had created. Because if he wanted to play strategy, I would respond with structure. Sunday afternoon, I sat in my car outside a grocery store parking lot, phone pressed to my ear, speaking to Jennifer Harper, the 3rd attorney. Her voice was calm, professional. The silent treatment, especially coordinated, can qualify as emotional manipulation, she said. Document everything. I chose her immediately. Monday appointment confirmed. When I got home, Ethan was sitting rigid at the kitchen table, arms crossed. He had clearly been waiting. Long lunch, his expression said. Long calls. Suspicion. I looked at him steadily. Did you say something? He slammed his laptop shut, stormed upstairs. I heard him on the phone. She was gone 4 hours. A pause. Then a female voice, probably Sarah, answered clearly enough for me to hear. You can't track her movements if you're not even speaking to her. I'm her husband. Then act like it. Long silence. Then his voice, smaller this time. I only have 20 days left. 20 days. I stood in the hallway, listening, and realized something quietly powerful. He thought this was a countdown to my surrender. It was actually a countdown to his loss. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling again. But this time, there was no confusion, no shock. Just steady calculation. He believed he could endure silence longer than I could. He believed I needed his acknowledgement more than he needed mine. He was wrong. because while he was fighting to win a game, I was preparing to leave the board entirely. Monday morning felt heavier than the others, not because I doubted myself, but because I finally allowed myself to grieve before the lawyer, before the apartment tours, before the logistics of leaving. There was still a marriage here. 5 years of shared mornings, shared jokes, shared holidays, even if they had thinned into something brittle. I woke up before Ethan again, lay still, listened to the quiet hum of the house. I turned my head slightly and looked at him sleeping, or pretending to sleep. The curve of his shoulder, the familiar rhythm of his breathing. For a second, memory rushed in, uninvited. The balcony where we met, the way he handed me water, the night he proposed, kneeling awkwardly in the living room because he'd been too nervous to wait for a perfect setting. He had chosen the ring himself, said he'd spent months researching it. "I don't want you to feel like I picked something random," he'd told me. And I believed him. Now I looked at that same man and wondered, when did loving me become managing me? When did admiration turn into containment? Tears came quietly, not dramatic, not loud. Just a slow, steady leak from somewhere deep inside. I pressed my palm over my mouth so he wouldn't hear, because even now, some part of me didn't want to give him that power. Later that morning, after he'd gone into his office, I walked into the kitchen. The printed spreadsheet I'd left on the counter was gone. In its place sat a sticky note, no signature. Just 4 words, "You're overreacting as usual." My chest tightened. As usual, that phrase echoed. Had I always been too much to him? Too ambitious, too sensitive, too emotional, too independent? I sat at the kitchen table and let the weight of that realization settle. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a temporary experiment gone wrong. It was a pattern, one that had existed quietly beneath the surface for years. I remembered the gallery emails, the filtered inbox, the subtle discouragement. You don't need to chase validation. Focus on us. Photography won't build a future. He hadn't shouted those things. He had said them gently, reasonably, and I had believed him. Because I thought partnership meant compromise. But compromise should never mean disappearance. That afternoon, I went to the lawyer's office downtown. Jennifer Harper's office was sleek and understated. She listened without interrupting, took notes, once reviewed screenshots. When I showed her the email filter rule, her eyebrow lifted slightly. "That's significant," she said. When I described the coordinated silence and the 30-day vote, she didn't laugh. She didn't dismiss it. She said quietly, "That's control disguised as psychology." And hearing it labeled so plainly almost broke me, because I had spent days wondering if I was dramatic, if I was escalating unnecessarily, if I was failing some invisible test of patience. Jennifer folded her hands on the desk. "Do you want to stay married?" she asked. The question hung in the air. I thought about it. About the house, about his family, about the man who once handed me water on a balcony. And I realized something devastating. I missed who he used to be, but I didn't trust who he was now. "No," I said. The word left my mouth soft but steady. She nodded. "We can file immediately. There's a waiting period in this state. You'll need a physical address if you're planning to move." Move. The word made my stomach twist. Leaving wasn't theoretical anymore. It was logistical. Real. That evening, I toured a 1-bedroom apartment near the park. Huge east-facing windows. Natural light pouring in. The kind of light photographers dream about. I stood in the empty space and tried to imagine it filled with my things. My prints. My desk. And suddenly, the grief cracked open wider. Because this wasn't just about escaping him. It was about accepting that the life I thought I had built hadn't actually existed the way I believed. I signed the lease, paid the deposit. Keys available Wednesday. When I drove home, my hands trembled on the steering wheel. Ethan was waiting in the kitchen. Arms crossed, energy tight and electric. He stared at me, hard, as if willing me to speak first. I met his gaze calmly. He inhaled sharply, almost spoke, then stopped. Turned away. Stormed upstairs. I heard him on the phone again. She was gone 4 hours. Pause. She's pushing. Another pause. Then quieter. I don't think she's breaking. For the first time, his voice didn't sound confident. It sounded afraid. I went to my office, closed the door, sat down on the floor with my back against the wall, and finally let myself cry fully. Not because I wanted him back, but because I was letting go of the version of my life that had never truly respected me. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet acknowledgement that you stayed too long. That night, I lay awake again. But the knot in my stomach wasn't confusion anymore. It was anticipation. 2 more days. 2 more days until I became truly invisible. Not to be punished, but to be free. Wednesday morning arrived quietly. No dramatic music. No storm. Just sunlight filtering through the blinds like any other day. But I woke up different, not emotional, not reactive, decided. Ethan was in the shower when I checked my email. Application approved, keys ready for pickup. My pulse steadied instead of racing. This was no longer about whether he would break the silence. It was about whether I would break my pattern. At lunch, I drove downtown and picked up the keys. The leasing agent smiled warmly. Congratulations. It felt strange to be congratulated for leaving a marriage. But when I stepped into that empty apartment again, keys cool in my hand, something shifted inside me. The space was quiet, unjudging, unmanaged. The windows faced east, exactly like I remembered. Soft afternoon light spilled across the bare floor. I lifted my camera and took a photo of the empty room, not because it was beautiful, but because it was possibility. That was the moment. The turning point didn't happen when I found the email filter. It didn't happen when the lawyer confirmed my suspicions. It happened standing in an empty room, realizing I no longer needed him to speak first. I didn't need him to apologize. I didn't need closure. I needed exit. I drove back home with calm precision. Ethan's yoga class was every Wednesday at 6. 90 minutes. Reliable. Predictable. I stopped at a moving supply store, bought boxes, tape, markers, bubble wrap, loaded everything into my trunk, parked 3 blocks away from the house, waited. At 5:55, his car pulled out of the driveway. I waited 5 more minutes. Then I drove in. 6:02 p.m. 90 minutes to disappear. I moved fast. Bedroom first. My clothes into boxes, shoes, toiletries. No hesitation, no second guessing. Office next. Laptop, hard drives, camera equipment, framed prints off the walls. Living room, the throw blanket my mother gave me. My books, kitchen, my coffee maker, my favorite knife. I left what was legally shared. Furniture, appliances. Everything that felt neutral. I wasn't stripping the house. I was removing myself. The silence inside the house felt different now. Not oppressive. Transitional. By 7:20, 15 boxes were stacked neatly in the entryway. My presence reduced to memory. I walked through each room once more. Checked drawers, closets, bathroom shelves. My side of the closet was empty. For years, it had been compressed into 20% of the space. Now it was blank. I went to the kitchen counter, sat down, pulled out a sheet of stationery. My hand hovered over the paper. This wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I wrote slowly. Invisible means gone. For 2 weeks, you treated me like I didn't exist. I want you to know it worked. I finally see clearly what our marriage had become. You believed I needed to learn my place. I did. My place isn't here. The divorce papers will be delivered Friday. I've left everything that was truly ours, which, as it turns out, wasn't much. Keep the house. Keep the life you designed without my voice in it. I'm taking the parts of myself I almost lost. Thank you for the silence. It reminded me who I was before I shrank to fit beside you. I'm not angry. I'm not begging. I'm simply gone. Don't call. Don't text. You wanted me invisible. Now I am, Mara. I placed the note in the center of the counter, set my house keys on top, kept only my car key, walked to the door, paused. 5 years in this house. I tried to remember the last time I'd felt safe here. I couldn't. I stepped outside, closed the door gently. 7:32 p.m. He would be home at 7:45. 13 minutes for a marriage to dissolve into air. I loaded the final box into my car, drove away without looking back in the rearview mirror. At 8:11 p.m., my phone started buzzing, his name lighting up the screen. Call after call. I declined each one. Text messages followed. Mara, where are you? This isn't funny. Answer me right now. I didn't respond. At 8:27, another message. I'm calling the police. That one I answered. I'm not missing. I'm gone. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, where are you? I typed one word, invisible, and blocked his number. At 10:45, unknown numbers began calling. Friends' phones. His sisters. His mother's. I declined them all. At 1:47 a.m., a final message from his sister's phone. Please just tell him you're safe so he can sleep. I responded once. I'm safe. Tell Ethan he got exactly what he wanted. Then I turned my phone off. In my new apartment, sitting on the floor among boxes, I leaned back against the wall. Silence. Real silence. Not weaponized. Not strategic. Just stillness. For the first time in years, my shoulders weren't tight. My chest didn't feel compressed. There was no anticipation of criticism, no expectation to adjust. I wasn't invisible. I was unobserved. And there's a difference. That night, I slept deeply. No rehearsed breathing beside me. No tension vibrating through the mattress. Just the faint hum of the city outside and sunlight waiting to rise. I woke up the next morning to sunlight pouring through the east-facing windows. Soft, gold, unfiltered. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it settled in. No tension in the air. No heavy silence pressing against my ribs. No one in the shower upstairs. No footsteps pacing in the hallway. Just me. I made coffee in my own kitchen, if you could call it that yet. Just a counter, a sink, and boxes stacked against the wall. When I turned my phone back on, it vibrated relentlessly. 63 notifications, all from Ethan, or numbers I recognized as his friends, or his mother, or Lila. I didn't read them, not one. I deleted every voicemail without listening, blocked every new number. Then I changed mine entirely. The new number went to 4 people: Jennifer, Lena, my parents, and my assistant at work. That was it. Friday morning, the divorce papers were served, exactly as promised. Jennifer texted me. Confirmed. I exhaled slowly. Ethan's response came through her office first, not directly to me. He contested immediately. Claimed it was all a misunderstanding. Said the silent treatment was a temporary exercise that went too far. That phrase made me laugh softly. An exercise. Like emotional deprivation was yoga. Jennifer's voice was steady on the phone. He's trying to frame it as mutual. I've made it clear the coordination and email sabotage undermine that narrative. Email sabotage. Seeing it written in legal language made it heavier, more real, more serious. Within 48 hours, Ethan tried everything. He emailed through his attorney asking for a private meeting. Denied. He sent flowers to my apartment building. Security refused delivery. He showed up once in person. The front desk called me upstairs. There's a man here asking for you. I'm not receiving visitors, I said calmly. They escorted him out. Jennifer later told me he was cycling through stages. Denial, anger, bargaining. He left a message with her office once. I never meant for it to go this far. But here's the truth. It had gone that far the moment he decided silence was a tool. Not when I packed boxes, not when I filed. When he voted on my invisibility. 60 days later, we sat across from each other in mediation for the first time. Neutral office, long polished table, his lawyer on one side, Jennifer beside me. Ethan looked thinner, paler. There were shadows under his eyes. For a split second, seeing him stirred something in my chest. Not love. Not regret. Recognition. This was the man who once handed me water. This was also the man who filtered my dreams. He tried to speak directly to me. Mara, Jennifer cut in immediately. All communication goes through counsel. Ethan's mouth closed. His eyes filled briefly, but I didn't flinch. We negotiated calmly. The house would be sold within 6 months. Equity split evenly. Shared accounts divided 50-50. He owed me $8,400 in overcontributions to the household fund. He didn't argue that figure. He knew I had documentation. 90 minutes. 5 years reduced to signatures. In the parking lot afterward, he stepped toward me. Not aggressively, desperately. Mara, please. His voice cracked slightly. I looked at him steadily. Didn't hate him, didn't pity him. Just finished. He had wanted me invisible. I gave him exactly that. I walked past him without another word. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. 6 months later, my apartment was no longer empty. Every wall held my work. 30 framed prints in rotation. Soft plants by the windows. A desk perfectly positioned for morning light. My Instagram following grew to 12,000. I booked 3 gallery shows in the city. The first opening was on a Friday night. A small crowd gathered, wine glasses clinking, strangers studying my photographs with genuine interest. Lena hugged me tightly. I miss this version of you. A woman purchased 3 prints. She said quietly, "Your recent work feels liberated." She was right, because the camera doesn't lie. It captures the emotional temperature of the person behind it, and I was finally warm again. I dated occasionally. Nothing serious. No rushing. Just conversations without power games. I learned to sit in quiet without fearing it. 3 months after the final paperwork cleared, I was in a cafe editing photos on a Wednesday afternoon. Ethan walked in with a woman, maybe someone new. Our eyes met across the room. He froze. I held his gaze briefly, then looked back down at my screen. Not cruel, not dramatic, just done. He stood there for a moment longer, then left without ordering. My friend beside me leaned in. "You okay?" I looked at my camera bag, my laptop screen glowing with the sunrise I'd shot that morning. The freedom to be here at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. My life fully my own. "I'm better than okay," I said softly. "I'm visible." People ask me now if I regret how it ended, if I regret not fighting harder, if I regret not giving him the full 30 days. The truth? It didn't end the night I packed 15 boxes. It ended the afternoon he and his friends voted to erase me. They thought silence would make me anxious, hungry for approval, grateful for crumbs. Instead, it gave me something rare: space. Space to hear my own thoughts without interruption. Space to see the pattern clearly. Space to remember who I had been before I learned to shrink. The silent treatment was supposed to teach me my place. It did. My place was never in a marriage where my ambition had to be filtered, where my success was inconvenient, where communication was replaced with strategy, where love turned into leverage. I don't hate Ethan. That might be the most surprising part. Hatred still ties you to someone, and I am no longer tied. I understand now that insecurity can disguise itself as control, that some people don't want a partner. They want stability that revolves around them. He didn't fall out of love with me. He fell out of comfort with who I was becoming, and instead of rising with me, he tried to quiet me. Here's what I've learned. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's punishment. And if someone chooses silence to control you, you are allowed to choose distance to protect yourself. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was accepting that the person I loved had been quietly afraid of my growth. Growth should never threaten love. It should expand it. Now when I wake up and light floods my apartment, I don't brace myself for criticism. When I post a new photograph, I don't check whether someone feels overshadowed. When I laugh with friends, I don't measure the volume. I take up space. Not aggressively, not arrogantly, naturally. The girl who stood on that balcony years ago, tired but open, still exists. She just forgot for a while. Ethan wanted an invisible wife. What he didn't understand is this: you can't erase someone who finally decides to see herself clearly. I didn't become invisible. I became undeniable. And sometimes the greatest revenge isn't loud. It's living well in full view. That's my story. And if you're listening to this while feeling small in your own life, let me say this clearly. You don't need to beg for acknowledgement. You don't need to win love. You don't need to shrink to keep peace. If someone teaches you how it feels to be invisible, believe them. Then decide whether you want to stay unseen or whether you're ready to step into the light. I chose the light, and I've never looked back.